Well, good evening, Manchester and surrounding communities. It is Wednesday, November 17th, and that means it's time for the Progress Report, as Bob calls it, Progress Report Land. I'm Mike Farley. I will be sitting in for Bob as the host of the show. Bob is away attending to some family matters, but he will be back next week. This week, we have a great show planned for you guys. We're going to be doing it via Skype, so you're going to have to bear with us with the production quality. But we have one of our favorite guests, Arnie Arnesen, is going to come in, and we're going to talk about state, local, national, international politics, but it all focuses on you and how it affects you. We're specifically going to be talking about what's going on here in the state of New Hampshire, and what we have for a legislature, and there's a lot of topics in that, but I'm going to basically just try to hang on for dear life and learn something as Arnie educates all of us. I want to remind folks, 640-3091 is our phone number. We would really love it if folks could call in. That always helps move the discussion in a way that might be interesting for our viewers. So please don't forget to call in 640-3091 if you have any questions or want to change the subject or call the topic. But without further ado, I want to welcome Deborah Arnie Arnesen coming to us from Concord via Skype. Thank you, Arnie, for coming on and taking the time to sit and talk with us for an hour today. It's going to be fun.
Well, I Skype every morning and every night. Now, why am I doing that? And I've been doing it now for almost an entire year. My first grandchild was born in Shanghai on November 20th, Joe Biden's birthday.
Congratulations.
And I've never seen her. I mean, physically, I've never smelled her, touched her, lifted her up in my arms. And it's my first grandchild. But every morning and every night we Skype. So I put her to bed in the morning and I sing her good morning at night. I just got off the air, off Skype with her just 2 minutes ago. And I'm grateful for Skype. I have to tell you that I've been so heartbroken at not being able to experience my first grandchild, but Skype has really given me an opportunity to sort of be intimate with her in a way that I never thought possible.
Well, that certainly is a heartwarming story, and congratulations. There's there's one thing about being a parent, but there's something really special. I know from personal experience about being a grandparent. You get all the benefits and pretty much none of the responsibilities.
Exactly. But I'm also going to share something with you. My children suffered from what I kind of describe as healthy neglect. Now you have to remember that in 1991 I ran for governor. In 1991, my children were 6 and 8 years old. And running for governor meant that I had to spend most of my time in the more urban part of the state. I lived in Orford, New Hampshire, a town of 1,000 people north of Dartmouth College on the Connecticut River. So I literally didn't see my children for almost a year and a half because there wasn't Skype, there wasn't the internet, we didn't have cell phones. So just imagine how horrible I feel now that I finally have my first grandkid, and here I was a terrible mother, but I want to be a good grandma.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself.
I don't know everyone, but it's but you have to understand that politics is hard on families.
Oh, sure.
It really is. It requires a tremendous sacrifice. And I'm trying to figure out, so why did Sununu not run for U.S. Senate?
Oh, so here we go. I'm what a great question. And I'm sure you might have an opinion on that one way or another.
Well, I would love to know because I think he made a mistake, to be honest with you. I think the next 2 years are going to be the worst 2 years in New Hampshire history. I think they're going to dismantle and demolish everything that we care about and love, everything that makes people think that this is a fine place to live and raise a family. And as a result, it's all going to happen on his watch. He's going to be terrified because the libertarians and the free staters are going to be in total control of the House and Senate. They will have gerrymandered to the point where they, split bedrooms up because they want to make sure if the wife is too liberal, they don't want her to be in the district. and as a result, he's going to have to live with the consequences of that. If he had been in Washington, he could have run away. But now, I don't know what he wants to do, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to control them because they're going to control and intimidate him.
Well, they certainly have had their will with him so far. During the first year, it sure looked like he was fixing to run for Senate. I mean, he went down to Kentucky. He was doing a lot of out-of-state fundraising. And I've got to wonder if something didn't trigger this change of heart, or it got cold feet. And what about those donations? I mean, I wonder if those donors are absolutely thrilled that he's not running.
Well, I mean, please, someone call in and give me some ideas as to why. I mean, honest to God, Mike, I cannot figure out the mental state of him making the decision. And one of the things he said, which was so cryptic, was that, well, I don't want to go to Washington because it's so dysfunctional, and I want to be able to do things. I want to be able to be effective. And the only way I'd go to Washington is if I was in sort of a managerial role. What is that, code for president? I mean, he wants to run for president in 2024? Donald Trump. I'm curious. But at the same time, what has he done? He talks about that he doesn't want to go to Washington because he couldn't get anything done. So I want to know what Sununu has done. Other than dismantle public education, oh, that's the legislature. Other than basically have the highest COVID rates in New England, oh, well, that's on his watch. Other than now telling businesses what to do because they can't demand a vaccine mandate. I want to know, what has he done that is so effective that he thinks staying here, he's going to be able to make a difference? Because the only thing I've seen is that he's a rubber stamp for the reactionaries that got elected when he got elected in 2020.
Well, let me ask this. Is it now a question, and I'm concerned about this on the national level too. We see this enormous infrastructure bill that is now passed that is clearly, it's going to benefit New Hampshire tremendously. It's going to benefit every state of the union tremendously, some more than others. That's getting something done. But is that the point in today's politics, or is it just being the warrior? Is it shooting the marbles out of your slingshot at your opponent, owning the libs? Because he's certainly he's battled the Democrats in the legislature over control of the purse string. I mean, he's done his battles. Is that not enough in today's politics?
Well, let me just say something. The Republicans have it both ways. The Republicans can, refer to the infrastructure bill as communism and socialism. They can talk about the fact that it's going to add to inflation. They're going to do it, but they then get the benefit of the Democrats doing the heavy lifting. So the Democrats pay for the bill, they create the bill, they pass the bill makes a difference in every state, in rural areas, in urban areas. We have a 10-year plan in New Hampshire, right? That's our highway plan. Mm-hmm. It would take us 30 years to do the 10-year plan because we are so cheap and parsimonious that we don't make the rational investments. So but for the infrastructure bill that Joe Biden just passed, we would still be waiting to sort of figure out, what are we going to do that bridge in Woodstock?
Exactly.
Fix the highway here. I mean, it's a bunch of crap. And here's the problem. So the Republicans who scream about the bill, like Sununu, for example, here's one of the things Sununu said. New Hampshire is going to get the least amount of money of all 50 states. Well, don't take any of it. It's communist money anyway. You don't need it, Sununu. Don't bitch and moan about the fact that you ranked 50th. You don't even like it, remember? That's what the Republicans keep telling us. They don't want to support this bill. So he wants it both ways. He wants more money, even as he complains about the passage of the infrastructure
bill.
Well,
we've even seen representatives and senators who voted against the bill, actually voted against it, coming out and touting the benefits of it in their home states, as if to kind of bask in the reflected glory of their something that they were against all along.
But have you heard what they're doing? This is so interesting. So I was listening to a Republican that did exactly what you just described. I don't know which state it was. Well, I like this aspect of the infrastructure bill, but I didn't like the other aspects of it, which is why I voted against it. I said, really? What aspects did you not like? Did you not like extending internet access into your rural areas in South Carolina, Mr. Congressman? Oh, you like that. Oh, you didn't like fixing the highways and the roads and the bridges? Oh, you like that. Oh, you didn't want a more possibility for EV chargers, since we know that every car manufacturer is moving into electric vehicles. And guess what? If you don't have EV chargers, no one's coming to South Carolina. So what they say is such crap. And here's the problem with the media. The media doesn't say, really, what didn't you like? What didn't you? I want everyone in South Carolina to know what you didn't like, because I want those constituencies to basically say to you, guess what? We like that. We need that. How could you have done it? See, this is the problem. They get to sort of say the garbage, and nobody pushes them back on what do they actually mean. And that, I think, is problematic.
Well, it's problematic to me. It's problematic to you. but it seems to be effective. It seems to be a tactic that is keeping them in power, and especially during those 10-year elections when we have the census and have to have redistricting. I wonder if you wouldn't want to, I mean, it's pretty much all part of the same thing, that the Republicans in New Hampshire, on a party line committee vote, have come up with this crazy horseshoe-shaped district that surrounds District 1, and effectively it'll end competitive elections.
Well, first of all, let me point something out. I was talking to an editor of a very well-known media outlet here, and we both realized that never have the Democrats been in control when we had to redistrict, ever in the history of the state. The Republicans, let's be honest, the Republicans controlled the New Hampshire legislature through the 1980s. Mm-hmm. I don't think we ever had a speaker's office, ever. Finally, after I run for office and lose, but I have coattails and skirttails, we see a change. No, it's absolutely true. I mean, if you want to see the line of demarcation, I may have lost everyone. I'll admit that. But trust me, we kind of changed the conversation in New Hampshire, and we became a more purple state. Okay, from that moment on. I mean, Clinton won New Hampshire and got a smaller percentage of the vote than I did, because I got more votes than any Democrat in history in 1992, but I still lost. But guess what? That changed how people looked at elections. But here's the kicker. The Democratic Party is asleep at the switch every decade, because that is the most important time that they actually maintain control of the legislature, so they can at least have a fair and balanced chance at looking at how we redistrict. But both times we have lost. Mike, we lost. And what's really a crime is we should have learned our lesson from 2010, and in 2020, everything above governor won as a Democrat, and everything below governor lost.
I understand completely. I was in that great sweep. I got swept out in 2010 myself, and it was a brutal loss at that time. And you would think that we would have 10 years to prepare for the next opportunity, and yet we really... There were a lot of issues with that election with regard to allocation, I guess, and we certainly did a great job on the national level. But
you know what? I hate, but the national level suffers because of what we just did. If you disconnect what happens at the national level with what's happening at the state level, then we are failing as a country. Because guess what? The Republicans excel at the state level. They excel, and now you know what? They do more damage at the state level. That state level then trickles up into Congress, where they do more damage. I mean, look what happened today with AOC and the censure of Gosar, or whatever the creep's name is. I mean, it's just unbelievable that Republicans are willing to rubber stamp someone who basically in a cartoon that he used his own media outlets for threatened to kill AOC. What's wrong with these people? You know, this isn't a cartoon. It's a threat. It's a threat. Oh,
well, loyalty above everything, I guess, on that side of the aisle. I can't explain it, and I'm done trying to explain it. But I guess I'll keep struggling. But I haven't come up with an answer yet. But the thing is, in the 2020 election, or the election for 2020, only 2 houses in the entire country in the state houses flipped, and they were both in New Hampshire. We lost the Senate and the House, and they were the only 2 houses across the country that flipped.
Do you know how embarrassing that is?
It's very embarrassing.
How embarrassing that is? It's. I mean, think about it. It was the most stable legislative year ever, I think, in U.S. history, but yet we were the aberration because we were not stable. And part of it is, and I'm gonna, you know, who I'm gonna credit. I'm gonna credit the Free Staters, the Libertarians, and Edelblut. Okay, that's what.
Really, Frank Edelblut gets.
Trust me, his fingers are everywhere. And as a result, they knew what to do. They put money into Republican primaries. They made sure that they elected in the Republican primaries the most conservative, uber, libertarian Republicans they could imagine. And then they spent money in the general election. Americans for Prosperity spent, I don't know how many, $1 million, $10 million, some incredible amount of money. I want to know whether we were able to even come close to the kind of cash that those Republicans spent in the legislative races. Not only were they wildly successful, but now we have a free stater who is the Republican majority leader, and they're dismantling everything that people value in our state.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the Free State Project? I mean, I've known about that particular outfit for many, many years. They were in the State House when I was there back from '06 to 2010. And they're still active and they're growing. And I mean, somehow they picked New Hampshire to be the place that they wanted to run this experiment. You want to talk a little bit about that? Help, educate me, educate our viewers?
So I'm going to recommend that everybody go to the Washington Monthly and read the article. I think it's, what is it called? The White Mountain Men or the White Militia Men or something like that. And it's talking about New Hampshire and the Free Staters. It's an amazingly well-researched article. It just came out about 2 weeks ago, everyone. And I'm going to recommend that you read it. It's written by a fellow by the name of Rob Wolf. And Rob Wolf is a Dartmouth grad. He worked for the Valley News, and he's now working, I think, for the Portland Herald. He's over in Maine now. But he always was following the Free Staters and always wanted to do a story about them. And finally, the Washington Monthly hired him to do this story. And what is so scary is that not only did the founder of the Free Staters, who, by the way, the founder of the Free Staters, what's his name? Jason Sorens, I think his name is.
Yes.
You know where Jason lives right now and works right now?
He's up at St. A's.
Yes, he's the director of ethics.
I was shocked. You pointed that article to me, and St. A's is my alma mater, and I was shocked to find that he's the director of the ethics project or something up there at St. A's. It was really shocking, and I'm very curious how he ended up there, given his background and the really destructive forces that he's set in motion here in New Hampshire.
Well, he actually set them in motion nationally, but because they chose the state and they picked and who put the welcome mat out for them? Craig Benson. When Craig Benson found out that they had picked us, Craig literally said, "Come, we welcome you. Show up." And it was a trickle at the beginning, but that trickle has now turned into more of like a stream or a river. And what they also know how to do, which is quite effective, is that they realize that they don't go for the top of the charts. They go for school board. They go for planning board. They go for select board. And you begin to see what they're doing, because a lot of people are exhausted. They don't want to spend the time. You usually are not paid, but again, a lot of power happens at that very local level. They know that. And they've been literally moving up the food chain. And then what happened in 2020 was that one of the Free Staters spent, I think it's about $50,000 or $55,000 using an outside PAC. He targeted about 72 Republicans who were too moderate for his taste. He made sure his boys ran against them. I think 50 or 52 of them beat these Republicans. And as a result, we now have a majority leader who is a Free Stater and moved here from Ohio with his business. And what we've seen happen as a result of him, plus Edelblut, who's in a position of real authority because he's the Commissioner of Education, we've seen a dismantling of everything we care about. We just saw what's happened with the PUC and energy efficiency. We saw what happened with the scholarships, the vouchers, and what's happening to public education. We're seeing what's happening with mandates and businesses. That we're going to see what's happening with gerrymandering and voting. You name what they're touching that they're not destroying.
Arnie, as you know, we break the show into little bite-sized pieces. We're at 20 minutes. We're going to take a quick break. Folks, don't go away, because that list of issues that Arnie went through at the end of the last segment, we are going to go into each one of those, and we're going to try to open them up and analyze them a little bit. So give us 30 seconds to regroup, and we will be right back. Don't go away. And we are back. Thanks for staying with us, folks. We just had to regroup and make sure that we're hitting these topics. These are big topics, folks. They may sound arcane. We're going to talk first about the Public Utilities Commission and a program called New Hampshire Saves, an energy efficiency program. You probably, it sounds very arcane, but people have taken advantage of this program across the state for years. And Arnie, I don't want to kind of misstate the situation, but can you explain what the PUC did? Basically, they just cut the funding for that.
So this program has been around for a long time. And one of the things is that all the states around us have these energy efficiency programs. So let's understand what the point is. The point is you can either build more capacity and produce more energy, or you can do efficiency and need less energy, which in a way is creating more energy. All right?
It's the low-hanging fruit we all hear about, right?
And it's a two-for-win. So if businesses and residents participated in what was called NH Saves, okay, this energy efficiency program that's been around for almost a decade. And what would happen is that they would encourage the utilities to help you create energy efficiency in your house and your business. So if you bought a new energy efficient light bulb, or if you bought a new energy efficient refrigerator or whatever, you would actually get a rebate from the electric company because you were saving energy, all right? And a lot of people were then motivated to actually create greater efficiency in their businesses and in their homes. So it was good for them. They got to save money. It was good for them because they had the utility company supporting them, and it was good because we didn't need more capacity in creating more energy. So it was great for the climate, great for the pocketbook, and great for any kind of new potential energy construction. On Friday, the PUC acted like they didn't understand how successful New Hampshire Saves was, how many consumers and businesses loved the program, how we still have a far way to go to create the kind of efficiency we needed, and they basically gutted the program on Friday. They gutted the program, as if anybody in their right mind wants to see this NH Saves disappear. And as a result, Eversource and a lot of other energy companies are telling people who made applications to save money, to winterize, to energy efficiency in their businesses, were being told, sorry, we don't send us the application. We don't think we're participating anymore. This is what the PUC did on Friday. And if you listen to the Consumer Advocate, and I'm going to make a recommendation, Mike, get Bob and the Consumer Advocate to come on the air, because by the time you're done, everybody's middle fingers are going to be up in the air, because what the PUC did was hurt us financially, hurt us from a climate perspective, and do something that is totally counterintuitive to what we should be doing as we look at a climate crisis that is exploding in front of us.
And the basis for this is anti-regulation, libertarianism, freedom.
Who knows? I mean, they didn't have a basis. That's the problem. That's one of the reasons why it's probably going to be appealed to the Supreme Court, because they didn't have one. That's the joke. That's why the Consumer Advocate was beside himself, because everybody was so shocked at the ruling. Like, what the hell are you doing? But that's the problem. When you are a non-governing party, there isn't a process, there isn't a policy, there isn't foundational arguments. All you know how to do is say no. That's what you do. And they do it really well. And we're all harmed by their no.
Well,
right? That's what
certainly, Bob has added me to a few email chains, and certainly a lot of people are up in arms, and it appears that there's a call to action to try to do something to overturn this. But this appears to be just then an exercise of raw power, which I have to say Republicans are not averse to doing. I've seen them do it year after year after year, and it just seems that the Democrats, I happen to be a Democrat, but it disappoints me that sometimes they don't exercise their power when they have it. Here's an example.
What's our power? You know what our power is? Our power is the Build Back Better bill. That's our power, if we decide to vote for it. But unfortunately, you know why Democrats can't do what Republicans do. Republicans are old, dying party. It's made up of basically old white men, all right? And they're seeing that the whole climate is changing.
That may be true, Arnie, but it appeals to suburban housewives. It appeals, they're getting that vote.
Well, they're playing to emotion and to lies. And why that's going to, and let's be honest, if you lie enough, it becomes the truth. And that's what the Republicans are doing.
I'm
They're
frustrated by
lying
that
with
like you
critical,
are.
they lie about critical race theory. They lie about abortion. Look what they're doing in Texas with abortion. Look what Sununu signed into law. You know, the most aggressive anti-abortion law in our history as a state. Not close to what Texas did. But if you were a woman and you knew that, like in Texas, there's no exception for rape or incest, and you're supposed to know you're pregnant after what, 6 weeks? I mean, after 6 weeks, I think it's indigestion. I don't think it's pregnancy.
I hear you.
This is part of the problem. And then on top of that, because there's no exception for rape in Texas, listen to this. The Governor Abbott says, "Oh, well, we're going to fight rape. We're going to eliminate rape from the Texas landscape." Do you know who has the highest percentage of rapes in the country? Texas.
I'm going to guess it's Texas.
Texas. So not only do they do these aggressive things that hurt women, create greater vulnerability, but then they lie when they say they're going to eliminate rapes. Really? Well, how come you didn't eliminate them 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago? Why do you have the highest rape statistics in the country? You don't care about women? You don't care whether they're raped? And now you don't care whether they're able to get an abortion. Instead, you're asking them to carry the rapist's child. How outrageous
Well,
is that?
we have a very restrictive bill here in New Hampshire, and not only on the substance of the thing is the bill dangerous, but the process of it they put it in the budget trailer bill. They didn't even debate it on its merits.
Yes, of course. That's because, and you know what that tells you? That tells you that they're spineless wonders. That tells you that they're cowards. The reason why they didn't want to put it in a separate bill is they knew that it probably wouldn't fly. But if they shoved it into the budget, then guess what?
It has to pass.
No, it doesn't have to pass. It does pass, and Sununu doesn't have the proverbial balls to veto it. He can veto it when it's the Democrats' budget, but when it's the Republican budget with all these poison pills in it, suddenly he goes, "Oh, I can't. Oh, I can't. Oh, you're a coward too, Chris." That's exactly what he is. Oh, you're afraid that they're going to come picket your house. You're afraid with the open carry. You're afraid of your own legislature. That's what's going on with Chris Sununu. Chris Sununu knows they're crazy. Chris Sununu knows they're extreme. Chris Sununu knows they're taking the state in the wrong direction, but he is afraid of them, everyone. This is what we've elected. We've elected bullies who not only intimidate each other, they intimidate the governor, and now they're destroying the state. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, we've ticked off several of the issues that you had racked up for us at the beginning of the segment, but one that came at the end that really surprised me is the influence of Frank Edelblut. I always saw him as a failed candidate for governor. I thought that Sununu threw him a bone, put him in education. I have to say I didn't realize how much damage he could do from that position, but he certainly has managed to wreak a lot of havoc across the state from that position of governor of commissioner of education, including in no small part how he impacted the way COVID was responded to in our school districts. Really kind of made a hash of it. Would you care to comment a little bit on Frank?
Well, first of all, you think that he was thrown a bone when Sununu gave him the commissioner of education.
I said that.
No. That's what he wanted. He's a Betsy DeVos clone. That's where the power is. If you can destroy public education, you win. You win. If you want to see fascism, authoritarianism, destroy democracy, control the process, the place you go is public education, because it is the place where we spend the most money. The state of New Hampshire doesn't spend the most money. The state of New Hampshire still ranks 50th in state aid to education, and if you tripled our state, we'd still be 50th. But guess what? When you start adding all the dollars we're spending in property taxes for public education, it is the most money we spend on anything, and that is public education. And if you can destroy public education, you control the state, because you control what people learn, you control what people want, you control how the democracy happens, you control everything. Edelblut didn't really want governor. He wanted what Sununu handed to him. And guess what? What do we found out? They remember the scholarship bill that they just passed, that quote unquote faux voucher bill. So supposedly when they passed this quote unquote scholarship bill where they're using public dollars to fund homeschoolers, private schools, and parochial schools, but they launder it through scholarships. They said, oh, not that many people are going to show up. Hardly anyone's going to exercise these scholarships. They lied. Oh, wait a minute. How do I know they lied? Because Americans for Prosperity spent I don't know how much money going door to door and marketing to people. Do you know about this scholarship program? Do you know what we'll pay for? And as a result of Americans for Prosperity working hand in hand with Frank Edelblut, guess what? Instead of it only being a couple of $100,000, we know right now it's probably around $7 or $8 million that is now being drained out of schools because of the scholarship. And Kevin Landrigan just issued a statement today on Twitter. Frank Edelblut just announced that this is the lowest number of public school children, I think maybe in the last 10 or 20 years. We have never seen so many students not participating in public education. All right, that number just came out today. Look at Kevin Landrigan's Twitter feed, and you will see what Frank Edelblut is ecstatic. He is so happy that the number of kids participating in public education is at such a drastically low number.
Okay, we have spent now about a half hour on this show really complaining a lot, and there's a lot to complain about. So let's flip the switch a little bit, flip the script, as they say. We got the rest of the show. What's the solution to this? We're going to get the gerrymandered districts. So Chris Pappas is going to have the steepest of uphill climbs to keep his seat. Whereas District 2 probably going to get stronger Democratic. What's the solution? Are they baking the pie so that we as Democrats, as people who want a different way of life in New Hampshire, simply can't react to this?
Well, there are two bills in Congress that, if we can get rid of the filibuster, will make a difference in the partisan gerrymandering that we're seeing not only in New Hampshire but around the country. Okay, so let's start with that as a premise. The Supreme Court claimed it could not figure out how to address partisan gerrymandering. God, where's my shovel? Anyway, so as a result, they did not find it unconstitutional. But that doesn't mean that Congress can't, in fact, make partisan gerrymandering illegal. All right.
And so there are bills right now before the Congress that would do that.
Right. But it requires us to get rid of the filibuster. And I guess I'm going to start with this. Will you ask Maggie Hassan and Jeanne Shaheen whether they support eliminating the filibuster? You see, we keep talking about Manchin and Sinema as if they're the only two senators who are still, talking about supporting maintaining the filibuster. But there are actually about 10 senators.
They're hiding behind those two.
Exactly. And you know how I know that? Because every time I watch a Maggie Hassan ad, the code is that she works across the aisle in a bipartisan way. Every single ad, she talks bipartisan. Now, I didn't mind talking bipartisan in the 1980s when I was dealing with rational Republicans who actually cared about policy and about the future of this country. Right now, bipartisan means, for the most part, you're sleeping with the enemy. You're sleeping with people who basically support the insurrection. You're sleeping with people who support Donald Trump. You're sleeping with people who don't want to invest in infrastructure. You're sleeping with people who don't really care about the climate crisis. So when I hear talking about bipartisan, I start to twitch. And the reason I start to twitch is someone needs to ask her, do you think we should get rid of the filibuster? Because I think I need to know that answer. Because if she supports the filibuster, she doesn't support democracy.
Well, that's a pretty decisive response, and I certainly can understand. I think the filibuster is problematic. I think it's anti-democratic. I understand that it's important to have institutions to protect the minority in play. I think we have them in our Constitution. The filibuster is not one of those protections in our Constitution, and I think that it certainly is a situation right now with the evenly divided Senate that if it were not there, it would be more convenient.
All right, but what do we do at the state level? So at the state level, let's be honest, they can gerrymander. They can be very effective at their gerrymandering because they can use now all these computer printouts. They know where everybody lives. They know what they eat. They know how they sleep. They know what books they read. So they know enough about every single family in every single town that they can do a pretty effective job of gerrymandering, especially when you're talking about 400 districts for 400 legislators.
Sure.
So what do you do? So let's suggest that they're able to gerrymander so that a lot of the districts are 56 or 60% Republican and 40% independent and Democrats. That's assuming that every Republican votes and that every Democrat maybe decides, I don't know if I'm going to show up or not. It is not ruled by the majority. It's ruled by the activated minority that shows up and votes.
Well, that's the problem with our election system. It's endemic.
Exactly. But that means that Democrats have a chance and independents have a chance. And the reason they have a chance is they have to do something that, sometimes shocks them. They're going to have to vote like they've never voted before. They cannot vote alone. They have to extend voting to every family member, to everyone they know. They should never go into a voting booth without 10 other people behind them that they know are voting. And the only way that you can defeat those partisan gerrymanders is to make sure that more of your people show up and vote than theirs. That's hard. That puts a tremendous pressure. That is a higher expectation on Democrats and independents. But you know what? If you care about the future of your state and the future of your country, then guess what? Toughen up and show up.
I've heard that argument, Arnie, that the Democrats are good at polling their voters, and we will out organize our worthy opponents. We will pull our voters to the polls. But yet we saw in Virginia that was not effective. And does that cause you any concern? Now, I realize we were supposed to also lose New Jersey, but we won New Jersey. People keep forgetting about that victory. We held New Jersey, the Democratic Party. But that technique of trying to activate and pull your voters, maybe it was the message in Virginia. Why didn't it work?
Ask me about Terry McAuliffe. No, I can't swear on TV.
I understand he's a very polarizing character. I understand that.
No. That's not my point. He's not a polarizing character. He is yesterday's story.
Okay.
He was Clinton's bagman.
Yep.
Okay, let's be honest.
We know that.
So he is about the past. And if you know who are your voters in the Democratic Party are going to be young people. It's going to be people of color. It's going to be people on the low income scale. All those things. Terry McAuliffe had no message for them. He could not speak to them. He could not excite them. He was yesterday's story, number one. Number two, he ran against Youngkin. So let's ask, what's Youngkin's political resume?
He was a wealthy man and had no record to run on.
Thank you. He retired from Carlyle Group in 2019. Do you know how much money he spent on his own campaign for governor? $20 million. All right? So here you have a handsome, articulate guy that puts on a blazer or a vest. I guess it was a vest, okay? With no political history, who had managed to hug Trump and push Trump away simultaneously, and you didn't know which one he is because he has no political history, okay? You don't know whether he's a Trumpian in a vest or whether he's an anti-Trumpian in a vest because he has no political history. And what was he able to do? He was able to play the race card. Mm-hmm. But he didn't play the race card the way Terry McAuliffe should have played the race card, which is to say that I believe in equal opportunity and
he attacked education.
He used the critical race theory. Exactly right. And since nobody knows what it is, it's not taught in school. The only word they know is the word race, and they're afraid. And the idea is somehow you're going to blame white people for everything that's wrong with what's happened in America is a bunch of BS.
That's not what it is.
Well, I'll give you an example of critical race theory, and it's happening right now. You know what it is? It's Rittenhouse. So what's happening right now? We have a young 17-year-old boy packing heat, coming to a place where he doesn't live, with a gun he's not supposed to have. And the only two people that were killed in Wisconsin, the only two at that, display of emotion and riot because of the young black man that was killed, are the two he killed. Did you know
I
that?
did. I did. And
That's it.
the chaos that he claims he was afraid of was created by himself.
Yeah, right. And the only two people in that whole insanity that was taking place in Wisconsin, the only people that were killed by a young kid who didn't even live there, who was defending property that he didn't even know about and nobody asked him for. And he claims that he felt threatened. Well, you know why he felt threatened? Because he was carrying a gun during the middle of this sort of chaotic moment, and people didn't know who was he, why was he carrying the gun, and was he going to shoot me? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, understand what happened to him. Did they arrest him when they found out that he had shot someone? No. What did the police do with him? They sent him home. So let's talk about critical race theory. Let's make Rittenhouse a 17-year-old Black Panther. Let's make Rittenhouse carrying a gun. Let's have Rittenhouse shoot 2 white people. Do you think the cops would send him home? No.
Do you really need to ask that question?
Wait. Do you think the cops would have shot at him? Probably.
Yep.
So if you want to understand critical race theory, take a look at the criminal justice system. And the criminal justice system has a race lens. And when you are a person of color, you are treated differently than when you are white. And the perfect example of that is Rittenhouse. Yeah, it's a white guy who killed 2 white guys. But trust me, a white guy with a gun killing someone versus a black kid with a gun is a totally different outcome.
Well, and I'm really glad you did that, because you actually went through the process that is critical race theory. It is a method of analyzing a situation by looking at it from 2 perspectives and then asking your brain to try to connect the 2. That's what it is. It's not teaching anything in particular. It's a way of looking at things.
Yes. I mean, oh God, it is to me. It's so obvious. I told you this story before. I had a young law student. He was Black. His father was from Ghana. He came to live with me. Now remember, he's going to be going to UNH Law. It's 3 blocks away. Concord, New Hampshire is a very white community. All right, and because he's going to law school, not only will he be walking down to the law school and walking back, but he'll be walking into my house very late at night. Right, very late at night. Now you see a young Black man walking into my fancy house in Concord, New Hampshire, and what do you think you should do? Most people probably would call the cops. So what did Arnie, no. What did Arnie have to do? Arnie had to be the equivalent of the Black mother. Only she wasn't going to be talking to her son. She was going to be talking to her neighbors and explaining to her neighbors, he lives with me. He goes to law school with me. He's coming in at all hours of the day and night. He's the equivalent of my son. Do not, I repeat, do not think anything other than the fact that he is a student. I had to do the talk. I had to do the walk. Why? Because I know about the double standard. A white student coming into my house, nobody would have lifted a finger. A Black student coming into my house at 11:30, trust me, someone was going to protect me. Protect me from what? My law student? No. A Black kid.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm reminded of that situation that happened at the very beginning of the Obama presidency, where that Harvard professor was going into his own house and got arrested.
Yes.
And there was the promise. They had the beer summit. There was the dialogue was going to begin, and here we are, how many years later, and we're still talking about the same thing.
Well, and I mean, let's even look. So you can see that in the criminal justice system. Let's look at in the area of finance. When you look at the 2008 economic meltdown, do you know which group of people were harmed the most as a result of that meltdown? It turned out to be African Americans. All right. Why? Because guess what they were sold? African Americans were sold more liar loans than almost any other group in the country. And the liar loans, by definition, meant that these mortgages were garbage.
They were worthless. They weren't backed up. No appraisals. I remember those days.
All right. So understand that once again, why were African Americans sold liar loans, but not white Americans? Why were they seduced into somehow thinking that this was good for them? And then when you look at the economic consequences and the devastation of the mortgage meltdown, it turns out they were not only harmed more than any other group, they still are recovering from that. And that was not true for many whites in this country. So even looking at the financial consequences, you have to start asking, why were they marketed to a product that should never have actually been legal, let alone even
Well,
defensible.
totally understood, but I think there were a lot of people that were duped by those schemes. I
Oh,
mean, I remember the
absolutely.
ads on TV; they were pretty blatant. You didn't need much, and they'd put money in your pocket. Do it now. All your neighbors are doing it. What are you waiting for?
Well, and but if when you actually begin to look at who are the
No, I
targeted
understand the
audience,
statistics bear out what you're saying. I
I'm
understand
not
that.
saying that white people weren't hurt or Chinese people weren't hurt or anybody wasn't hurt by liar loans. Everybody was hurt
Arnie, we got
because
an
they're called
incoming
what?
phone call. Let's see what direction this goes. Caller, thank you for calling the Progress Report. You're live on the air. What can we do for you?
Oh, yeah. I'm really upset with what I'm seeing on the redistricting plan. Okay?
I
It is
see.
gerrymandering by any other name. Nothing else, can describe it. And I'm reminded that started with Governor Jerry down in Massachusetts.
Yep.
By the time he got done restricting, it looked like a salamander, hence the name was born. Okay? And I just can't understand how in this society it can happen. Okay? It really should be based upon population only and not delving into who's a Democrat and who's a Republican, okay? And then the thing is now it's going to be tilted in favor of the Republicans in my county, and I just can't stand what's going on. All right, appreciate you listening to my crying on your shoulder.
Well,
Thank you, bye.
we appreciate the
No,
call. We love all of our callers. Thanks for calling in. And
but
that's the situation. Even Channel 9, WMUR, which is by no means a real progressive station, said that this new redistricting plan will completely eliminate competitive elections. We're going to have two congressmen. They're going to be split, so the state's going to cancel itself. That seemed, I
right.
mean, they did the same thing with Manchester. Manchester, by right, should have two senators, but they split the city up and with three senators, so in the hopes that one or two of them, and for many years, one of them was a Republican at all times, the one out of Hooksett. So I
Now,
mean, it's obvious what the intent is, isn't it? But as you say,
well,
the Supreme Court says it's all right.
Well, refresh my recollection because my understanding was the Democrats passed a bill to create like an independent redistricting committee, okay? So that the idea of gerrymandering, the kind that we're talking about now that the Republicans are shoving down our throats, could not happen. Did Sununu veto it? I think
I
he
believe it
did.
was vetoed.
It was vetoed, and there was not the capacity to override. But think about this from a perspective of the Republicans. The Republicans win either way. If we do a fair redistricting, then they at least get a shot.
Exactly.
But if they veto it and they're in control, then they're never going to do fair. They're only going to do a partisan redistricting. So the Democrats always are trying to offer something that at least looks palatable and defensible. And then even when they do that, they still, because of Sununu, they get their knees chopped off. And then the Republicans come into control and, being fair and defensible, oh, that's old school. That's not what we want. We want to put our finger on the scale because we want to pick our voters as opposed to having our voters pick our
That old
politicians.
saw.
And it is. It's very, but it's authoritarian. That's what dictators do. Look at Putin. Putin has elections every couple of years. How does he do? Well, you know how he does. I mean, it's
80%,
not really an
90%.
election. Yeah, exactly.
We couldn't have
Exactly.
100. That would look fixed.
You're absolutely right. We couldn't have 100. But in a lot of ways, it's just so sad. It's so sad because I don't know what is it that they value. I mean, that's really what I want to know. What kind of state do you want to live in? What kind of country do you want? And I'm looking at the whole climate crisis because they're still in climate denial. Did you look at what's happening in Vancouver? Vancouver, because of the floods, there is no way to get into Vancouver by road.
It's cut off
None.
from the country. I had
None.
seen that in the
Cut
headlines.
off the country completely. So we keep talking about the climate crisis. Vancouver is in the middle of that crisis, and it's today. It's 2021, everyone. I mean, even if you don't believe in climate change, you want to survive. And everything is suggesting that you may not survive if you don't address some of the problems that we see happening with floods, with fires, with rising sea levels, with melting ice caps. I mean, something's happening. I don't care what you call it, but you won't survive.
Arnie, you jump from redistricting, and it's always fun. I'm trying to keep up. Now we're over at climate change, and certainly, there has been progress, at least from a national perspective. We're back in the game. The version of the statement that finally came out was not what everyone had hoped for, but it's politics. You do what you have to do. But I do want to get back to the question about redistricting commissions, because even that can be used by the Republicans to fix these districts. I forget what state it was where the redistricting commission simply dragged its feet, didn't make a decision, and it went back to the legislature, which was Republican controlled. So even with a redistricting commission,
well, but all right. So wait a second. So what you're telling me is they created a toothless, spineless commission.
Yes.
They called it a commission, and therefore, because they called it a commission, we all should feel good about ourselves. And then the commission turned out not to be effective, and it went back to the legislature.
That's the scenario.
But then it's not a commission. When is a commission not a commission? The commission you just described. Okay? And if it doesn't have authority, and if it doesn't have exclusive authority to do this, and there isn't a sense of true independence, then it's not effective. I mean, that's what the real problem is. Just because you call it something doesn't mean it is something. And that, I think, is the real problem, everyone. Don't get swept away by the name. Look into the details to make sure it actually works or doesn't work. And that's what happened with that commission. And I just think that's the big problem here. We have to look at the fine print, and nobody likes to do it. They like to look at the headlines. They don't like to look in the details. And that's what makes me nervous about the infrastructure money. How are we going to spend this money? Are we going to spend this money repairing old infrastructure that really doesn't relate to the changing demographic, that doesn't relate to traffic patterns, that doesn't relate to the climate crisis? Or are we going to anticipate what we know is going to be a more challenging future? For example, the one good thing I think about what's happening with the infrastructure bill is that they're putting a lot of money into rail. And you know why that works? That works on 1,000 levels, because rail isn't just about moving people, it's about moving product, everyone. And what do we know about our supply chain problem? Part of the supply chain problem is we don't have truckers. And truckers don't want to be in the business of going long haul because they're away from their families and they're alone for days and days.
Isn't there something called a train that can take care of that transportation? But yet we don't have it.
Exactly. And what I love is you do the short haul to the train. You could almost even drive the truck right onto the bed of the train, or at least
they have those containers that transport very easily on the flatbed.
Right, and then go the distance, and then have the short haul pick it up and take it to the warehouse or take it to whatever. It's a win-win. We still need thousands of truckers. They're not going to be out of business. But what we've done is we've eased the pressure on the highways. We've made it cheaper to actually move that product to market. It's almost seamless in so many ways, and it's the most effective way of getting products into our hands as quickly as possible. And if people are complaining, then you better want to make sure that you have more rail than you know what to do with.
Well, certainly the Progress Report has been an advocate for commuter rail coming into Manchester and up to Concord. We've been that way for a long time, and we agree with you on that. But we haven't talked so much as we have today about the the other aspect of it, the freight aspect of it, which really that's where the big money savings can come about.
I mean, let's be honest. I would say 70% of rail is really a story about moving product, and 30% is about moving people. And the only place you're really going to move people is within the urban areas, the urban corridors. You want to get to Washington, D.C., you want to take to Montreal, or you want to get to Boston, you want to get to New York, you want to get to Detroit, you want to get to whatever. That's moving people, and that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I want to see cars off the road, but that's really in a more congested area. We are talking about a more urban area. But the kind of rail I'm talking about is about the rail that we really need, which is going to take us from a port in San Diego and get it to somewhere in Minneapolis, or take it from a port in Brooklyn and get it to somewhere in Manchester. And that's about moving product. And if we can move product, then guess what? We've even saved our roads. because you know that those huge trucks do so much damage to our highways. And as a result of that, by getting them off of our highways, we're actually saving the
That
investment we're making.
infrastructure money goes longer, goes further. Well, Arnie,
Yes.
thanks very much. We're getting down to the last few minutes of the show. I am very grateful to you for coming on. We have covered the waterfront as far as the topics go, but we've kind of had a consistent theme of people have to pay attention, we have to get out and vote. And there's something going on under the surface here that maybe we all, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but there really is a movement here in New Hampshire that we need to keep an eye on and identify. It's having an impact.
And the Republican Party needs to be rebooted. It needs to be rebooted. It needs to be able to be a party. It is no longer a party. I'm just telling you right now. A party that supports insurrection, a party that doesn't support democracy, a party that doesn't support the franchise, a party that doesn't support infrastructure is not a party.
Well, and all of those things evolve around one particular person, and it's become a cult of personality, Donald Trump. And I've always said a leader without followers is just a guy taking a walk. So it's the followers that have to change their mind. They have to reassert themselves and become a party that is someone that can be worked with. Bipartisanship just for the sake of bipartisanship is not effective. You need to have a working partner on the other side.
Michael, I married a Republican libertarian atheist. Arnie Arneson married a Republican libertarian atheist. That isn't possible today. It's not possible today. Because to be a Republican today is someone I could not marry. But I married one. All right? There
Well,
you go.
we'll end it with that, Arnie. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Thank you, folks, for watching. We really appreciate it. The production values are a little difficult when we're using the Skype, but what it does is it gets the information down here for us to present to you. And Arnie is a font of information, and we certainly appreciate her coming on the show. Next week, Bob will be back. If we do a show, I'm not sure if we're going to do one the day before Thanksgiving. I don't know what the station will be doing, but if they're open and available, we'll try to get down here and do a show. Say that again? We'll be here. Well, they will be here. So if they'll be here, we'll be here. So, folks, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next week.